Before the actual class of the stream of Amrita that cures all illness, I would like to address a few things. Firstly, these few days is rather a bit different. We are having a few changes regarding to our sitting plan. We tried a few different ways out, and I'm still a little bit unsatisfied with some minor issues, but I think that is fine. Maybe now we have too many seniors and people of middle age and so on, and it can affect the sitting plan of the after-class presentation group. So we may then have a few more changes later. Some of my ideas may be difficult to execute because the management team also have their issues in communication. But we can now set our sitting places, do not change around, do not walk around, and so on. Otherwise, there could be quite a bit of disturbance. The second thing is that people in the post-class presentation group are going to maintain in this group, and we're not adding more people in that group. And the members in that group should take turns to come to Larangar, to come to the shrine hall. Otherwise, we probably don't have enough space for you. So we can then follow the management team's orders and then sit at your designated seats. And when it is your turn to give presentations, then you can come up to the front and make presentation. Now, this is regarding to the post-class presentation group. And then the second thing is that now we have the wish-fulfilling treasury in the next few days. And people consider that this is Vajrayana teaching, and people are trying to get into Larangar. I think it's not that necessary because the wish-fulfilling treasury contains maybe 2 or 3 chapters at the end talking about the Vajrayana teachings, but the previous parts are all Sutrayana teachings. I've heard that there are male members who then there are some male members who got in contact with people from outside and who are tested positive for COVID, and now we have someone who is in close contact with a COVID patient. If we were to have more of those cases and more of those close contact cases, we need to probably face more changes and maybe obstacles, because this is a very small place. Larangar is a small place, and if we were to have a close contact with the COVID positive cases, then we may face different kinds of large changes. There are some authorities who are quite afraid of having a breakout over here in Larangar because they're afraid of losing their status and losing whatever they have, and there are the ones who are wishing to just simply protect us. So people, out of various reasons, they may implement various kinds of regulations. And that is why I call up on all of you to not travel to Larangar right now, because if you were to spread COVID over here and then bring up various kinds of obstacles from the authorities, then you definitely bring lots of negative karma to yourself. You can say that. Again, it is not the convenient time to propagate Dharma to large crowds or through online and so on. It is not that we don't want to do it. It is not that we don't have compassion, but due to different constraints and different conditions, we made this choice, this decision. Another thing I would like to say is that recently, Shrangama Sutra and the Wish-Fulfilling Treasury, these kinds of teachings, I will be teaching on them, but I will have to see how my health goes. Initially, a few of my illness need to have regular checkups every 3 months, 6 months, and so on. But nowadays, because this is a special period of time, I am not going to hospital right now. However, if I ever feel uncomfortable and there's something not right about my health, I would go to the hospital to get checkup. So you never know how the plans for classes will change or not. Currently, we're studying this particular text on illness, and that the Amrita that cures all illness. On one hand, we see illness as a favorable condition to practice up on the Dharma. To have illness can be a skillful means to fulfill all of our 6 paramitas. That would be really wonderful. But that being said, I've worked very hard for the first half of the year. I do not dare to say that my Dharma teaching can benefit all of you that much, but at least my involvement in management, in communication with the various levels of management and to people outside out of various reasons, maybe my influence and maybe my power and so on. I am exerting lots of effort and can bring forth some benefits. I don't dare to say I can bring a lot of benefits to all of you, but I think I've tried my very best. I think we all need to be prepared in both aspects. Unsoku Rinpoche, during his time, there was a song that's very popular that says that the practice that I'm engaged in is Maha'ati, and the place I consider is my hometown is Laranga. But nowadays, it is not the case anymore because there are different kinds of conditions and obstacles that may stop you from staying here. Maybe your health, maybe out of various reasons, then maybe you cannot stay here anymore. Then you need to be prepared for that scenario of changes. Will you be able to find a different place to go? Maybe Dharma Center, maybe your home. So you need to be prepared for that mentally, and you need to prepare for that more practically as well. As a monastic, of course, you don't have a home anymore, but you should prepare for what you would do at your senior days. Do you have a place that you can actually engage in your practice? Do you have a place that you can stay? Do you have a place that you can bury your body where you can have sky burial? You have to think about it. It is necessary. I'm not speaking of it because something happened. I'm only speaking of it because in case those things were to happen, and we need to be prepared for any scenarios. And I think that is quite necessary. Now you're here to seek for the Dharma teachings. To receive even one class is not that easy. In the past, whenever we had all of those favorable conditions where we study hundreds of classes in a year, We felt it was the norm. But now all kinds of conditions have changed. On top of that, we can see that the people are getting older. The people who are sitting in front of me are all seniors. And we have to face the truth of it. As a practitioner, as someone who is managing in Larangar, we need to be prepared for any changes. So this is something I would like to address before the actual class. Now, the Amrita that cures all illness is something that I did not receive the oral transmission. Whenever I receive the oral transmission, I'll give you the reading transmission then. I only translated this text. Initially, I wanted to receive the oral transmission from someone else who had it, but I didn't have enough time to do that. Later, maybe. Let us now continue with our class. To liberate all sentient beings, let us generate the supreme bodhicitta. Now let us continue with our class on stream of nectar that cures all illness. The content of this text is rather very clear and simple to understand. In fact, whenever we study such a short text, it should be very easy for us. However, we had never really studied such a practical method to work with our illness before. And I'm sure after studying it and taking it into your heart, it will make a difference in your life. Such teachings, including transform happiness and suffering onto the path of liberation. Many people told me that after studying that text, they noticed the difference and the change in their life. So this is a similar text to that one. Yesterday I wanted to finish the second part of this text, or the second main point, on viewing the illness as guru. But since I didn't, so we'll continue to finish that part first. Previously we already covered the part that as long as we still have one breath left, then we should try our very best to use that body to engage in virtuous actions. We shall complete whatever actions or whatever activities we begin without any indolence. We have to practice with great diligence so that everything will be thoroughly done. Especially those of you who are in Larangar right now, the reason you're here is not because of benefit or any kinds of materialistic gain or any fame. Rather, you're here because you seek liberation. If you're here only to engage in indolent chatters and futile speech, even talking ill of the others behind others' back. All of those kinds of actions are not what you intended to engage in when you first came here. We have only limited resources and infrastructures to support a limited number of people over here. Therefore, since you're already here, you should try your best to use all the resources to engage in virtuous practices. Otherwise, it's a squander to your own virtue and to your own merit. Now that we have the dorms, the dorm buildings, the dorm building 1, 2, and 3, those buildings are made available to our practitioners. But I noticed lots of our practitioners do not cherish the infrastructure that's provided to you, the residence that's provided to you, the water, electricity, so on and so forth. Really need lots of people and lots of effort to maintain. And there are people who initially only wanted to stay here for a year or two, so they asked to use that house or use that room for a year or two at the beginning, but then eventually they wanted to take that dorm room for their own and then stayed here for 3 or 4 years without informing anyone. As long as you're using the dorm residence, you should be aware that the reason you're staying here is because of a group effort. So when you're here, you should try your best to serve the Sangha, to engage in thorough study and practice of the Dharma, and engage in various kinds of meritorious actions, so that your staying here is meaningful. Compared to our opportunities of engaging in virtuous activities over here than that of a large urban city, we know that we have much more opportunities over here. So it's important for you to reflect up on yourself and see if your action actually fit into this practice center. If it's fitting, Larungar as a Dharma center, all the way back to the first Dudjom Rinpoche, it was used as a practice center for hundreds of people. And Phuntsok Rinpoche, on the second propagation period in time, he started the Larungar Practice Center back in 1980. Till now, it's been about 4 decades, throughout which many people attained realization, and many became good spiritual mentors who conducted activities benefiting self and others. And there are many, though that they had not attained full realization yet, nor became spiritual teachers. However, they had never broken their vows. So they preserved their pure precepts. Of course, there are a very small number of practitioners who stayed here also broke their vows and did not engage in Dharma practice. There are people like that too. But the key point is that I think every one of us should reflect upon ourselves genuinely and look at your own actions and see if your behavior and actions are fitting to continue to stay over here. Otherwise, if we were to let our mind go as it wishes, then our mind could be influenced gravely by our past negative karma, also being influenced by all kinds of non-humans and different forces, which could bring about great harm to yourself and others. Under all kinds of conditions, it's easy for us to be indolent and carry out our activities in great afflictions. If you are under that kind of influences and it continues to stay in Larungar, if you were to only conduct negative activities such as various chatters and creating quarrels with your Sangha members, those would be not worthwhile for you to continue to stay here. So I encourage all of you to abandon those indolent activities and carry out your actions like a true practitioner. Even if you cannot do that for a very long period of time, I ask you to pledge to do that for 1 year. You do not chat about others' mistakes and do not speak ill of the others behind their back, and do not quarrel with the others for at least 1 year, so that eventually you will be able to turn your mind onto the path of liberation, and you can have the opportunity to benefit self and others. That part was on avoiding indolence, abandoning indolence, and practice with great diligence. Diligence is definitely a very important aspect. The kinds of people who are not ill, but they squander their time in eating food and drinking and entertainment. They're obscured by all kinds of distractions. However, for those kind of people, because they are afraid of getting ill, therefore they would engage in various kinds of virtuous activities such as prostration, such as circumambulation, as well as purifying their obscurations and activities like such. They then transform the illness into their spiritual teacher, their spiritual guide. Nowadays, the circumambulation of the mandala structure that we have over here, the new requirement is that you can only circumambulate for 3 rounds because it's not very convenient for people to do that over there due to constructions. Initially, if people are ill, chanting the 100 syllables mantra as well as prostrating and circumambulating, those are very virtuous to practice during illness or to prevent illness. For in those cases, then illness definitely became a good spiritual guide. So we should rely on illness, the condition of illness, to accomplish all of our virtuous roots, to mature our virtuous roots, and to practice our mind, so that we will mature our path on the path of liberation. In this way, illness becomes a good companion on the path of liberation, on the path of training your mind. It becomes a skillful method. If you were to practice this way, then your mind will be ever maturing on the path of liberation. Choosing from being healthy but not engaging in any practice of liberation at all, or being ill but engage in the practice of liberation, what's a better choice? Of course, from the point of view of liberation, it would be better for us to be ill and tread on the path of liberation. The great masters of the past, they would use the analogy of illness as good medicine, so that it could put impetus to people to engage in the practice. Master Lien Chi stated that illness to the ordinary beings, it is something that is fused with suffering and something to avoid. But to practitioners, especially to Master Lien Chi, he said that illness is really the antidote. How could illness be antidote? How could illness be the medicine? It is because having illness could put impetus for us to practice the mind of renunciation, practice upon the teaching of impermanence, and help us to engage in the practice of practice confession and to gain insights. Therefore, for myself, ever since I got ordained till today, I got 3 major illnesses. Each of the 3 times, it really helps me, all the illness really helps me to develop more insights and helps me to engage in the practice of confession more. And every time after I had illness, I definitely see that I made progression on the path of liberation. So we should use illness as a skillful means to engage in the practice. It's probably easier for you to think that, oh, it would be wonderful if I can get ill when you're healthy. It's easy to think in that way. But when illness dawns on you, then it may feel very different. You probably will feel quite fatigued and feel uncomfortable. And then you lose your heart, and then you would engage in all kinds of non-virtuous actions. That could also happen. For example, people who are ill tend to get more aggression. They probably would lash out their anger onto the medical staff members and the nurses and people who took care of them. That is why nobody really wants to take care of people who get ill because they have bad temper. Especially for people who are not that cultured, and somehow they feel very arrogant about themselves, and then they feel that they deserve to be treated nicely by everyone since they're ill, and they would treat all the doctors and nurses badly, sometimes even to tell them off. But when you're ill, I think it's quite important for you to let go of your arrogance. Whatever or whoever you were before, since you're ill, it is a time for you to start appreciate everyone who's still around you when you're ill. The doctors, nurses who take care of you, and the relatives who are there for you. It is a good time for you to learn how to appreciate and to feel gratitude for everyone. Whenever you feel anxiety or you feel upset, that is exactly the time you should practice supplication to the three jewels. Especially for those people who give teachings to the others, who practice the throat practice, or the practitioners, or the great Khenpos, great masters who talk really eloquently to the others. Nowadays, I notice some Khenpos and Khenpos, they would start off to boast to the others, or started to say that, oh, I'm giving you the teachings of Vajrayana teachings. I heard that some Khenpos and Khenpos even wanted to give the Vajrayana teachings to the others without them finishing the neutral practice. Dharma is not something that you can give to the others, especially the Vajrayana teachings is not something that you can give to the others just because you have the knowledge of it. It's not that easy at all. So for those group of people, you need to contemplate in such a way that I've been giving teachings of the Dharma to lead the other sentient beings, but simply they are no other than lip service. This illness is really a test for me to see whether my actual practice can transform this illness onto the path of illness. It is a great test for me to see whether my actual practice have attained a sign of warmth. Whenever you encounter illness, it's really a big exam. Not only illness, in fact, any other kinds of obstacles are exams to you, a test to see your practice. Others can see your behavior and can see your level of realization very clearly. For example, after a simple conflict, if you were to block the other person completely, then that is very telling on your own level of realization. also speak ill of the others. There are people, I think, they are very good at adding insult in the injury. We usually would say that a friend in need is a friend indeed. So it is during the difficult times you can really see who is a friend and who's not. It could be a good criteria to evaluate your friend, your family, your relatives, or your gurus and your Sangha member. The other day, I saw a report on the previous Korean president who recommended a particular person. The reason of her recommendation was that when I was in the impeachment trial, he was the only one who treated me with kindness. Even when I was imprisoned, he was still very kind to me. Nowadays, we don't have the severe incidents such as the Cultural Revolution happening. But there are people, for example, after some downfalls or after some ups and downs, right away they would change their attitude. I understand, of course, that there are people who just don't want to get into it, they don't want to get involved, and then there are people who are quite scared if something were to happen to them, and some of them could be having lots of wisdom, and they simply want to be neutral on the situation, and some of them, they could just simply be foolish and they don't know what to do. But to follow along and started to make criticism, of course, if your criticism is very objective, you can speak up whatever you need to say. But I think a lot of times it's really that they don't know how to think straight. According to Winston Churchill, he said that we have no lasting friends, no lasting enemies, only lasting interests. Of course, he's only talking about politics, but when it comes to practitioners, I think many of the practitioners are only interested in the profits or the interests. They don't have a genuine way of relating to the others. So I think illness can be a very good testing ground to see the true realization of the practitioner. When you have some grave illness, that is exactly the time to see whether you can apply your practice onto your illness. Don't pretend to be a practitioner when everything goes very smoothly, and don't pretend to be an ordinary being when you're suffering from obstacles. This is a very commonly known Tibetan saying. What it means is that when you have food, plenty of food, plenty of clothing to wear, and when everything goes well, don't be so arrogant. When everything goes well, when you're healthy, when you're safe, when you enjoy all kinds of comforts, don't boast about your insight or your level of realization. It is only when you encounter some great obstacles or you're in grave illness, that's the time to truly see your level of realization. Whatever you've said before you encounter those obstacles, sometimes you can't really do it. According to the requisites of awakening, it says that one should say what they can practice and do what they've already stated. If they can do so, if they can do what they say, then others would generate faith and trust to you. Therefore, we shall try our best to be trustworthy by speaking truthfully and practice what you believe instead of only boasting about it. For example, use the practice when you're ill. Then people would be able to notice the difference. Then they will notice that, oh, this person definitely is practicing what he said. he's very good at applying those teachings onto his own life, onto himself or herself. Compos and Kimmels sometimes would say that, oh, they're practitioners and they would start giving teachings to the others. But whenever it's their turn to come over various obstacles, to face various obstacles, it seems that they couldn't really apply those teachings themselves. Therefore, we can see that it's easy to say, but difficult to apply those teachings.
可能这个病上是恶缘成为世修的主板，可能这个念在一起可能好一点。就是
And then over here it continues to say that so that the obstacle, so that the condition of illness can become the companion of practice. To summarize the second point over here, it says that the ones with sharp capacity, they would be able to transform illness into the practice of seeing the true nature, because the ones with sharp faculty, they would be able to practice with illness with their previous understanding of Mahā'ati or the great Madhyamika. But I think for ordinary beings like us, it would be a bit difficult. It is only for people who have already seen the nature of their mind and already attained the realization of Mahā'ati. Because for those people who understood and who come to the realization of such level of practice, they simply see illness as a mere play. For the middling capacity practitioners, through the practice and the practice of the taming of the mind, they would be able to see the futility and the illusory aspect of illness. Therefore, they would be able to accumulate myriads of merits and virtues through their practice, such as Tanglen, such as generating merits through making aspirations and so on. Some would be able to practice in such a way, and some would be able to practice the purification of their obscuration. And then some would be able to practice the aspiration, making aspirations. The middling capacity practitioners can use these three ways to transform illness onto the path of enlightenment. And then the lower capacity practitioners, they will be able to understand what's been taught in this particular text. The teachings that's given in this text, such as conducting your actions according to the karma and view illness as your guru, as well as knowing the virtuous aspects of illness. So all of those teachings would be more in sync with the ones with a lower capacity. For the lower capacity practitioners, though that they cannot attain the kind of realization as the sharp faculty practitioner or the middling faculty practitioners, however, they could at least understand the teaching within this particular text, and they will be able to gain the experience that is very genuine to themselves. And then they would be able to engage in as much practice as possible for them. The simple practices such as the purification practices, the contemplation up on the suffering and illness of the other beings in different realms, and so on. So the practice level or the insights of practice can definitely be improved through the experience of having illness. In such a way, I think each one of us should transform illness onto the path of illness according to our own capacity. So the sharp, the middling, and the lower capacity practitioners practitioners can make the choices on their goal of working with illness. The ordinary beings nowadays, after they get ill, they would suffer gravely, just as how a madman falls into a large pit. And since they cannot see anything, since it's a madman, then after falling into the pit, they won't be able to do anything over there. But for the practitioners, I think we are very fortunate that we receive this teaching. And now we know what to do when we do fall into that pit of illness. We know that we should practice in such ways that we need to contemplate upon the suffering of samsara and then generate the mind of renunciation, and then we can contemplate upon the illness or the downfalls of impermanence, and then we can contemplate upon the various types of sufferings when the Buddha taught on the suffering of suffering, where you can start to look around and see that, well, now I'm sick, nobody really wants to get close to me anymore. That is suffering on suffering. So that's how a genuine practitioner would do during this period of time of illness. They'll slowly tune their mind onto the path of enlightenment, onto the path of practice, instead of feeling hopeless and would fall into that great darkness of despair like the ordinary people without any spiritual practices. I vaguely remember this story I've translated. It's a story about Marpa Lotsawa when he went to India to rely on Tilopa. At that time, India was extremely hot. For 13 times, Marpa fell ill, and each of the 13 times were very dangerous, and he almost died. And when he was ill for the last time, Tilopa went to him personally, and he said that it is because my Dharma is so precious and profound, that is why you're encountering such obstacles of illness. However, I see that you have such great faith towards the Dharma, therefore I would pray for the three jewels to give you blessings, therefore you won't die from this illness. You shall view the illness that you have now as the blessings of the three jewels. Don't give up your right mindfulness nor your compassion to the sentient beings. Marpa was very touched because his guru came to see him personally, and his guru consoled him with such genuine words. And then Marpa said that I will not regret to fall ill or to die if I can receive the teaching. We can see that great masters like him, their mind and their words and their behavior are completely different than the people nowadays. People nowadays, they would say that, my dear teacher, why is it that your teaching caused me to have such great illness? That's probably what the modern people would say. But back then, Marpa Lotsawa didn't say that at all. People usually say that obstacle always outsmarts. But if you have a sturdy mind, if you are persistent, and if you are very strong, then I believe the obstacles won't outsmart you. During illness, it's crucial for our mind to be sturdy. Don't give up. Don't be despaired during illness. You need to see that illness is just temporary, or it's just one phase of life. And during this phase of life, during this period of time where I have the opportunity to work with illness, then I'm going to fully utilize it to generate bodhicitta, so that illness can be positive, illness can be beneficial. Now, this is the second point, to see illness as a virtuous guide, a virtuous teacher. Now, we're going to talk about the third point, is to understand illness is a companion, therefore we should engage in the 6 paramitas. The 6 paramitas, as all of you know, this is one of the most important practices in Mahayana teaching. Whatever text you look for in Mahayana teaching, they all talk about 6 paramitas. While the 6 paramitas, including generosity, including keeping precepts and so on, those are things that we practice when we're well. Why are you talking about practicing the 6 paramitas while we're sick? Now, the first part is to practice generosity and to tame the mind. One should contemplate in such a way, though samsara is impermanent, all of the appearances of samsara is impermanent, it is suffering, it is selfless, but I myself have not developed a full understanding of it or full realization of it. To ordinary beings, because we have such solid grasping towards the phenomena, therefore we don't understand the suffering, the selflessness, emptiness, and impermanence. However, now that I am ill, I experience all kinds of suffering, let it be physical or mental. Also, your experience of impermanence is very different. According to the commentary of the Four Noble Truths, it says that the impermanence is just like so. It changes moment to moment. Look at Shanghai, for example, the center of the finances and economy. But after the pandemic lockdown, currently people are going through lots of suffering because they can't get enough provisions. Similarly, look at Hong Kong, look at all the big metropolitans around the world. After the epidemic, it seems that the large cities are under grave impact and they can't conduct their regular activities anymore. And those were not even imaginable before the pandemic. The force of the pandemic this time, I believe, definitely brought about the experience of a very different lifestyle, a completely different lifestyle that we can never imagine, that we could have never imagined even. As Buddhists, though that we can only do so much, but we truly understand why this happens. Though that we can't do much about the pandemic, we definitely could use it as an opportunity to practice. Last year, when the pandemic happened in Chengdu, I was there. In the later part of it, because there were not enough food that can be delivered, therefore I can only boil some porridge. Therefore, I contemplated on when we didn't live during the time of pandemic, we can go anywhere and have food. But now, even eating some food can be a luxury. In Shanghai, it is happening right now. The billionaires even, they used to be able to eat whatever they can and go wherever they want. But now they're also eating porridges, same as celebrities and same as all of those people with the status and so on. They're having the same situation as the common citizens. Therefore, we can see, because of the power of this pandemic, we can truly experience the impermanence in a heartfelt way. And over here, it continued to say that at that time, if you were to observe your own mind and body, you wouldn't be able to notice that all the phenomena the so-called existence, the so-called kind of self is not existent. If you have such kind of sharp wisdom, then you can use that wisdom to observe your own mind and body. Then you'll be able to realize the selflessness of the so-called self. According to the adornment of Madhyamika, it says that the Potagala is not made of earth, water, fire, wind, or space. It is not a consciousness or anything else. Then who is this Potagala? Who is this self? If you think there is an existence of a self, then is this self earth? Is it water? Is it fire? Is it wind? Or is it space? Where can you identify this solidly existent self? Whoever you are, if you have wisdom or if you are a scholar, try it yourself. Can you find a solidly existent self? But not finding the solidly existent self doesn't mean that you don't have sickness either. No, that is not the case either. So over here it says that it is only because of the self and the grasping towards self as well as this body that we grasp onto so much, therefore all kinds of illness will manifest. According to Vimalakirti Sutra, it says that there are 4 great elements, and the 4 great elements compound to give a name to this so-called body, but the 4 great elements is indeed without a master. Therefore, the body is without a self. The 4 great elements doesn't have a master, therefore the body doesn't have a self. When we say that the body doesn't have a self, does it mean that illness is not existent? That is not true. The illness exists in a dreamlike, illusion-like way because we have self-grasping. As long as you have self-grasping, then illness will manifest in a way that is dreamlike and illusion-like. After understanding that, then we should contemplate in such a way that now the Mara of illness, the Mara of anger, all of the sentient beings, all of the other beings who wishes to obtain this body, all of our enemies and foes and the Maras and evil spirits, they wish to obtain this body. Therefore, I shall practice the generosity to them. So you should contemplate in such a way again and again, and then contemplate and visualize in the short and concise way of the choke practice. There's a chode practice that's composed by Dudrum Rinpoche. I know many of Dudrum Rinpoche's disciples still practice it. They're very good at practicing this. The third Dudrum Rinpoche propagated this teaching very well. Unfortunately, he passed away at such a young age. There's the concise practice, and there's the extensive practice of chode practice according to Dudrum Rinpoche. In the Nyingma tradition, we also have this concise version of it. So depending on your own conditions and your own time and ability, you can practice and visualize the chode practice. Let it be extensive or the concise version of it. If you really can't practice this chode practice, you can practice the other practice. For example, in Words of My Perfect Teacher, where it says that if you call out my name and pray and supplicate to me for 100 times, it's still less effective than when you can let go of your own body and offer your body. Because the more you call up on the protections from the others, the more grasping you have to yourself. Rather, it would be better for you to completely completely let go of your body, let go of your self-grasping. And at that time, the Maras, the evil spirits, would have nothing to do. They would not be able to do anything to you. It is exactly the same to everything that happens in this world. The more you grasp onto anything, let it be worldly relationships or anything that you grasp onto in this world, the more you grasp, the more likely you will lose them. Just like holding on a bunch of sand, the harder you grasp onto sand, the quicker you will lose them. So the more you grasp onto yourself, the evil spirits and Maras would be able to harm you more. So the more you let go of yourself, they will not be able to do anything about you. And this is how you can temporarily purify illness and ultimately fulfill all the virtuous provisions that could lead to liberation. I think I've mentioned this particular method before, that whenever you're supposed to have a surgery or having a bleeding nose or the menstrual blood for women, as well as all kinds of illness that could happen to men as well. At that time, whatever illness it may be, you should make the aspiration that may those sentient beings to receive my blood, and to whomsoever wishes for this blood and body, may they receive this, may they have it. Especially practitioners, whenever they are supposed to go on and have a large surgery or operation, then that's the time to make the aspiration before the operation. You should make the aspiration that may all of those sentient beings that I owe debts to, may they come and enjoy my body. According to the destroyer of the great trichiliocosm,
吹破大乘经当中呢，就是也说这个盛会，还有呢就是现善，就是人这个稳重坚定，就是现。
Noble ones, and consider giving away even their own bodies. Never encounter the 8 perils.
也要这个就是舍弃自己的身体。
So for those kinds of people, they should consider give away even their own bodies. In this way, they would never encounter the 8 perils. The 8 kinds of perils, such as the perils of a great flood, fire, elephant, lion, poisonous snake, rakshas, and bandits. According to the Great Heap Sutra, it says the 8 perils, including war and vicious ghosts, as well as the vicious constellations, the wild beasts, the bandits, drought and flood, as well as famine. Those are the 8 types of perils. According to the Great Heap Sutra, it also talks about the 8 types of perils. The perils that's caused by water, fire, wind, and ground. Those kinds of perils. So for those ones who have profound wisdom, who have great faith, if you consider to often practice giving away your own body through practices such as fire offering, in such a way, as a Mahayana practitioner, we should constantly practice this taking and giving. This is really the best type of practice. Therefore, over here it says that by grasping onto this body, all kinds of suffering and afflictions would naturally arise. Therefore, we should practice generosity without any grasping. This is the kind of practice, and this is the practice of generosity. generosity. We usually talk about the generosity of giving the Dharma teaching, giving the wealth. In fact, all of those kinds of offering, the offering of wealth, for example, even if you offer it for hundreds of thousands of times, it is still not as precious as giving your own body, according to words of my perfect teacher. In the view of modern medicine, illness are viewed as some kinds of imbalance. But according to the Buddhism point of view, especially the ancient teachings, it says that the illness really comes because there are various kinds of sentient beings who are your creditors, and they are simply trying to harm you as a revenge. Therefore, at that time, the best practice would be to practice generosity, while thinking that, well, this body, you can take it as much as you like, as much as you want. I surrender, I give my body to you. And then the body sometimes would naturally get well. When you're ill, that is really the best time for you to do the throat practice. But when you're really not feeling well, when you're suffering from great pain, it would be the best for you to ask some help from the others to help you to make those torma or to make some practice implements. Now, the second part is on observing precepts. This body, after being harmed by illness, will naturally then part from nocturnal emission, especially for young people, since they kindle lots of the fire elements in their body at that young age. Therefore, it will be easier for them to have the emission. But for a special group of people, such as monastics or people who received special empowerments, emission is not permitted according to some Vajrayana and some Sutrayana precepts. But if your health is not great, then none of those would happen because you don't have that kind of desire. I remember there's a story of Nanda. There was once a Nanda and the Buddha went to a palace. The king's consort had great respect and faith to the Buddha as well as Nanda. Therefore, the consort came forth and prostrated to the Buddha and then prostrated to Nanda. But Nanda appeared to have this impure action at that moment. And then this consort right away started saying that, how could your disciple behave in such a way? I think people's desire work in such a way that when you are healthy and you have nothing to worry about, it's easy for people to commit mistakes out of their desire. But once your body is not that healthy, once it's fragile, then it's very difficult for you to commit in vicious actions. There are people who are very vicious when they're healthy, but when they get ill, then right away they couldn't really commit so much vice activities anymore. So from that point of view, illness can be a good thing as well. After having illness, you will have more opportunities to work with your mind and to practice with illness as an opportunity. It would also be easier to observe the undefiled supreme vow. Whatever kinds of vows that you've made, whatever kinds of precepts that you take, it will be easier for you to observe them when you're ill. Some young monastics, since they get ordained at a young age, some of them, if they're not very healthy, if they're ill, it's actually easier for them to observe their precepts. It's easier for them to persist in the Dharma practice all the way through. So the second part is that it's easy for people with illness to observe pure precepts. The third aspect is patience. One should contemplate in such a way that the illness is really the maturation of the karma that I had committed in the past. So any kinds of illness at this point, they are related to the illness, to the negative karma that I've committed. Therefore, I wish that all the causes that sentient beings are planting for illness, all the causes of suffering, which could lead to which could lead to the kind of illness that I am suffering now, may all of these kinds of causes of suffering be matured on me. May I take this. This is taking and giving. This is the Tonglen practice. Of course, you have to be very courageous to make that wish. Otherwise, it's difficult for people, for ordinary people, to make that kind of aspiration. But it happens, and I know that there are people who can do it too. For example, I know there are women who, at the time of giving birth, they made the aspiration of may all the pain that the mother has at the time of giving birth be matured on me, on myself. The result of that practice is that though there are physical pain, and the physical pain is quite intense, but the mind is not suffering because of that physical pain. There are not only people nowadays, in fact, the great practitioners of the past, they practiced in the similar way. If you have illness of the eyes, then you should contemplate in such a way, may all the sentient beings who have the eye illness and disease be matured on me. So illness may appear to be unwanted, but for people with certain practice insights, it would be beneficial. There was once Jime Rinzhe Rinpoche got ill. I went to see him, and I said that from one aspect, everything of your Dharma propagation is going really well, and it would be such a pity if you won't be able to teach because of your illness. But from a different perspective, your illness could be of benefit to you as well. He smiled back to me and he said that, of course I understand, but when I suffer from such grueling pain, I think I forget about all the practice instructions, but whenever I feel a little bit better, I do engage in that practice. Some of our Dharma masters, Khenpos and Khenmos, whenever they get ill, I noticed that there are a group of them who can't bear the pain. Don't even mention about the given teachings. They can't even maintain a living anymore. But by practicing taking and giving, it would definitely help you to progress on the path swiftly. There is that opportunity. Now, the next one is diligence. Diligence is also a crucial point that you can practice up on during illness. This kind of training the mind is not occasional, it is not temporary. Rather, you should practice it at all times with great respect, with a great persistence. And then you should practice with the armor of diligence. There are practitioners, their practice will not get affected by illness or not. There are practitioners who don't engage in any practice at all. There are practitioners who practice diligently when they're healthy, but once they are ill, they don't do anything anymore. They'll just lie in bed, and then they say that I don't want to do this, I don't want to do mantra, I don't want to study, I don't want to practice, I don't want to do anything. Not only they're frail in terms of their body, carry some kind of anger. In Tibetan, we say that is the illness aggression. That is the special type of aggression, the aggression that derived from illness. Such kind of aggression will increase further and further if certain people get ill. There's another type of practitioner who practice continuously in health or in illness. Furthermore, they would practice with great diligence with an armor. Armor is something that is used in the war. Nowadays, people also wear those bulletproof vests. So those are the armors that's referred over here. So when we're ill, we need to put on the armor of consistency, so constantly practice. And then the second armor you should put on is the armor of respect, the respect towards the three jewels. So such kind of respect does not only happen during illness, rather it is something that you should carry at all times. According to the Mahayana Adornment Sutra Shastra, it says that just as one should continuously to drill wood to make a fire, our practice should be as constant as that, so that the fire can be made.
真的生病的时候呢，就是我们还是更加的，就是包括这个，如果实在是病得很严重。
Of course, if you're really ill, there's really not too much that we can do. I remember that during my surgery, at the end of it, I really couldn't do much. However, after 1 month of my surgery, I went to start giving teachings. Before the surgery, I asked 2 questions to my doctor. I said that, can I still take airplane after the surgery? He said that no, not airplane, but you can take the train. That's why I took the train instead. And then the second question was that, can I still give teachings? And then he said that yes, you can give teachings, but not too loud. Don't speak up too loud. When I was giving teaching on the Medicine Buddha Sutra, it pained me a lot during giving that teaching. I'm not boasting about myself or anything. I'm simply speaking that sometimes there's nothing that we can do about illness, but we should continuously to do whatever we have to do. Last year, I started writing down lots of my life stories, and I noticed many of my translations are done in hospitals. I didn't specifically pick the hospitals to do my translation, or specifically wrote down the name of the hospitals, such as the hospitals in Shanghai, in Shenzhen, in Chengdu, Huaxi Hospital, which is one of the most common ones I usually go to. In the recent years, I don't stay in hospital as often as I used to. Therefore, I usually finish the translations in either Larungar or somewhere else, but not really in hospitals. Though those translations were not finished in hospitals, it doesn't mean that I wasn't sick or ill when I finished those translations. And the translations or the illness that I had at those times are completely different than how I used to have them. But I still am very grateful to this body. This body, though it is ugly and it is simply a bag that is filled with various things in it, I still am very grateful to my parents who give me this. It is not particularly beautiful and not made of great quality. It is domestically made, but I am using this body to engage in virtuous activities as much as possible. So I think it's really essential for us to remember that illness is normal, and it's hard to find a time where we're completely healthy. And if you were to decide that when you're completely healthy, that's when you're going to do virtuous activities, that is not going to happen very often. So ordinary beings, yes, sometimes because of their past merits, they're very healthy. Very rarely they would get ill. But when people, after they reach the age of 50 or 60, the body's health will naturally decline. Pontsukul Rinpoche sometimes would ask the attendants that how was your sleep last night? And I then thought to myself, why would Pontsukul Rinpoche ask people that? Because even if they can't fall asleep, they can get up and they can memorize books and doing practices. But now I reach this age, I'm aware that this is really not the case anymore. So I think to human beings, it will be very difficult for us to survive in this world without persistence. Through illness, I think such kind of persistence as well as respect can be developed, which is really important. And then the fifth one is about meditation. Whenever there is some kind of illness that would cause grave pain, at that time, do not forget about the object of practice and then practice up on compassion as well as emptiness, and then work on the dissolving with the illness with great attentiveness. When you're having any kinds of ache of heartache or any kinds of illness, do not forget your practice. There are two ways to engage in practice at that time. The first one is the relative practice, and the other one is ultimate. So the relative path is do not forget your practice and then practice practice compassion to the sentient beings, such as Tonglen. So that is more of the relative, and then the other one is ultimate. The ultimate meditation is on working with the emptiness. The nature of illness is no other than emptiness. Therefore, at that time, there's nothing to grasp onto. That is also another way to tune your attentiveness in your practice. In the meditation paramita, you can practice Tonglen to generate great compassion, to practice taking and giving, and then to dedicate merit, or to practice the emptiness nature of illness. You can practice up on the threefold emptiness. Do you remember when we were studying Vimalakirti Sutra, Manjushri asked Vimalakirti, saying, how is your health? Is there any illness in your body? Vimalakirti said that, what is the shape? What is the color of illness? And then Manjushri continues to ask, well, is your illness your physical body, or is the illness in your mind? Where is it? Vimalakirti replied by saying that no, illness is not as one of the body, because the body is without any characteristics, nor is the illness nor is the illness one with the mind, because mind is no other than illusion. So those are the teachings that's given by Vimalakirti at the time, which then later led to the liberation of many sentient beings. Now you have this great opportunity to practice meditation paramita. Even if you have the heartache, have whatever kinds of aches that you have, then look at that ache. Look at that illness. Is it the same as the body? Is it part of the body? Is it away from the body? Where is your illness? Then maybe you will attain liberation. Then the sixth one is wisdom, the Prajna Paramita. When we get ill, then we should practice in the Prajna Paramita as well. When we listen to and contemplate upon the teachings given by the Guru, especially the teachings upon illness. Mipa Rinpoche, in fact, also give other texts on illness too. whenever I have time, I will translate it as well. The other day, I looked into illness specifically, and then I noticed many great masters wrote teachings on illness. If I were to give more teachings on that, I'm sure we will have opportunities to practice with illness. There are people who may think that, oh no, I'm really healthy, I don't need to study this practice upon illness. I sleep well, I eat well. I think my only worry is that I'm a little bit overweight. But other than that, I think I'm really well. But you can't be too certain of that because everything is impermanent. Therefore, I think listening to it is really important. When you're ill, it is important for you to use Prajnaparamita to observe the illness. You should practice in such a way knowing that the pain itself, the one who feels the pain, and then the object of the pain, all of these are just like a dream and just like an illusion. There are many methods of pain. There's the acute pain, there's the chronic pain, all kinds of pain. In fact, all of those, as well as the one who is experiencing the pain, the one that is the pain, and the one that is the object of the pain. They are no other than dreamlike and illusion-like, knowing that the pain itself and the illness itself is devoid of rising and ceasing. Therefore, all illness are no other than emptiness. Venerable Gunden Chopo said that when our hand touches the tip of a needle, then it would definitely pierce our finger and create a pain. But when we use Prajnaparamita to observe that pain, then it seems that the pain is not anywhere. According to Venerable Zen Master Zibo, he said that when one is ill, then one should look at, is there someone who is experiencing the pain? If there is no one to experience the pain, then how could there be an object of the pain? That is why he then later said that in the ancient times, many attained the realization of mind during illness. Many great masters attained liberation through having illness. I'm sure we will have a large number of people over here who can attain liberation through illness. We should also know that in the ultimate sense, all illness are devoid of rising and ceasing. For that reason, all illness is no other than emptiness. It is simply appearing vividly as bliss. The illness itself doesn't have any place to born, doesn't have any place to abide or to cease. Therefore, the illness from even the second turning of the Dharma wheel, it is empty. From the third turning of the wheel, the illness, the appearance of illness, it is bliss. Whenever we get ill, we need to understand the dreamlike and illusion-like quality, and then we need to understand from the ultimate point of view, there is no birth and no cease. And then thirdly, we need to know that it is not of void either. It is still appearing vividly as bliss. In such a way, then both of the merits would be accumulated. It is simply vividly appearing as bliss. Therefore, by relying on by any kinds of illness, one could increase their level of their understanding, their level of insights, and attain the fruition of the three kayas. For such reason, we need to praise illness as a companion on the path of bodhi. We should praise the illness. We shouldn't be afraid of illness. We shouldn't be afraid of illness. In fact, we need to praise illness. It is not that we praise illness because there is illness, because illness is worth of praise. Otherwise, we can just praise the pandemic, isn't it? But we're praising it because the practitioners, by using illness on the path of liberation, they can really attain liberation. Sometimes when I look at so many people who are getting ill nowadays and who died during the pandemic, if they can receive such precious teachings like this, at least that they will be able to attain a much deeper realization. They can attain a much better recognition of illness. In fact, this kind of profound teaching is not given to anyone. It is not that everyone can develop a more profound realization because of this teaching. It is only by those people who have great wisdom. Also, the way that it analyzes the illness is from a very profound perspective as well. If you can practice according to the teaching, then illness will not create a great harm on you. Even if you can't make a great progress on the path, at least you will be able to transform it onto the path of liberation. So the other day I thought to myself, well, I really want to get ill and try this practice. But I think I didn't really succeed as much as I wanted, because such illness definitely stopped me from doing my daily practice for a few days. But later I did make it up. Sometimes when we face illness, there are people who would have lots of fear, especially when the illness is grave. There are people like that. People would feel that way. But because we have very different capacity of practice, there are the kind of people, after receiving this type of teachings, that they would be very brave and they would make tremendous progress on the path. But there are, of course, the ones who, after receiving such profound teachings, they will still stay where they are without any change. And then Mipa Rinpoche gives this verse saying that illness and suffering is not illness and suffering. Illness is the great bliss Dharmakaya. So from such a great master's point of view, the illness is really not illness, rather it is just a play of the Dharmakaya great bliss. The great yogi who understood that, then illness or not, there is really no difference. I really hope that a majority of you, I really hope that all of you can write it down on your notebook or on a note where you can see it very often. Isn't that great? This particular verse. See, whenever we have illness and suffering, we feel that they are truly existent, illness and suffering. But over here, Mipa Rinpoche said that no, illness and suffering is not illness and suffering. It is no other than emptiness, bliss. Therefore, for the yogi who come to the true realization of it, illness or not, there's really no difference. Illness or not doesn't affect the mind of joy. Not only that it doesn't affect the level of realization, it could make your level of realization further and further. And then as it is composed by Azida. Azida is the name of Mipa Rinpoche. May all be auspicious. Now let's stop here today.
Pashe Jirgan Jiran Churban Chubun Solen Drova